Welcome to Close Listening. I'm Zach Morgenstern, joined as always by Ludwig von B. And before I introduce today's album, I want to talk briefly about a video I made before. I made a video called 10 Albums with Great Openers and Closers, because one way to really appreciate an album as a piece of art is, if like a story, it has a true beginning and end. David Bowie's The Rise and Fall of Ziggy Stardust and the Spiders from Mars is an excellent example of that. It has a heart-wrenching, memorable opener in 5 years and a distinct yet equally dramatic conclusion in Rock and Roll Suicide. More importantly, neither of those are the most iconic song on the album. They're not necessarily in the top most iconic 4 on the record. Why? Because when you're telling a good story, you want to have juicy details in the middle. You want your climax somewhere, towards the end in the second half, but not necessarily at the very end. So one thing that kind of frustrates me is when an album opens with what is unequivocally its strongest track, and it kind of goes downhill from there. So when I first listened to John Lennon's Imagine, I was very annoyed when I put the CD in the player and instantly Imagine starts playing. Imagine is the greatest song of John Lennon's solo career, perhaps the greatest song of his solo career plus his Beatles career. I mean, it's in the conversation for greatest pop song of all time. There's no way you're going to top Imagine, and what possibly are you going to put out there that even compares? On top of that, Imagine is a wonderfully rich musical arrangement with a real point to say, whereas a lot of the tracks that follow it are messier. The lyrics are less rich with imagery and more Lennon just saying literally what's on his mind while playing dirty blues guitar. But as I listened to the album and came to appreciate the other songs, realizing it was unfair to hold them to the standard of Imagine, I started thinking, what if I'm getting this wrong? What if there is a concept to this album and Imagine is distracting from it? Imagine is one of the great political songs of all time. It espouses, arguably, maybe not even so arguably, a communist ideology while making it sound reasonable to the general listening public, making it something that a bunch of vaguely liberal singers would sing years down the road to protest COVID. So if you listen to Imagine and expect this album of brilliant political songs, you're going to be disappointed. But then I thought of another meaning of Imagine, the literal meaning of having dreams. And you have dreams when you sleep. And what if the beautiful, relaxing tune of Imagine is not the beginning of a political concept album, but the lullaby that opens an album about John Lennon going to sleep and John Lennon having a nightmare. Track 2 on the record doesn't quite hold the candle to Imagine, but it's a pretty good one. It's called Crippled Inside. It's sort of a goofy, I think, vaudevillian kind of ballad, and the chorus goes, "One thing you can't hide is when you're crippled inside." You can put on a good look in the streets, but that you can't hide from your inner problems. Well, how does this fall into the theory that this record is about John Lennon having a nightmare? Well, in your day-to-day life, you are interacting with other people. You can dress yourself up. In many cases, you can make them think of you what you present outwardly. But in your dreams, you are stuck with your inner thoughts. And if you are crippled inside, you are forced to face that. Track number 3 is called Jealous Guy. I mean, its meaning is quite apparent. It's John Lennon dealing with the side of him that gets angry, that's not good at relationships, that has caused misogynist behavior in his past. But what's interesting about the lyrics, when they're not directly lyrical, it starts, "I was dreaming of the past and my heart was beating fast." So Jealous Guy is not just a song about John Lennon denouncing his jealousy, about trying to move behind it. No, he's creating this sensation of being separate from his body, of John Lennon the hippie watching John Lennon the jealous guy and being terrified of it. John Lennon's nightmare is seeing his dark side, and he really doesn't like this. The next song on the album is called It's So Hard, and this one is one of 2 dirty bluesy ones. So this one, if you look at its lyrics, it's about the conscious world, but it's a very mechanical description. He says, you gotta live, you gotta love, you gotta be somebody, you gotta shove. It's like a list of incredibly vague directions. It's almost John Lennon in this dream world. He's stuck He's watching himself, his heart is beating. He's like, please get out of this dream, get back to being a real person who moves through the world. You got to eat, you got to drink. But just because he's telling himself how to go through the motions of being human, it doesn't mean he can escape his nightmare. The next track is called I Don't Want to Be a Soldier. Now, this fits into the more mainstream interpretation of Imagine as a political album. But again, like It's So Hard, its fellow blues track, I Don't Want to Be a Soldier, has ridiculously simple lyrics. I don't want to be a soldier, mama. I don't want to die. I don't want to be a sailor, mama. I don't want to fly. I don't want to be a failure, mama. I don't want to cry. So he's imagining all these situations of being a person in the world, and in all of them he thinks about fear. He thinks about sensitivity. You know, it is an anti-war song, but it's just as much fear of I, John Lennon, when I'm not putting on a show of emphasizing my values, I'm afraid I can't function. I'm afraid this deeply flawed human. Everywhere I go, I'm gonna die. I'm gonna be forced to fly. I'm gonna cry. I can't escape all these simple pains. The next song on the album would be side 2. If this was a record, we get Gimme Some Truth. Now, Gimme Some Truth certainly sounds like a protest song, particularly because it mentions Tricky Dicky, you know, Richard Nixon, but it's also reminiscent to me of a fever dream. So I've looked this word up because I think it means different things to different people. It's just vaguely this idea that one clue you have a fever is that when you're dreaming, you have these very dreams that are in some way intense and you really don't like them. And for me, how they manifest is something about the actions in the dream. It's sort of a visual representation of dizziness and discomfort. So it's usually I have to do one task again and again, and it never satisfies whoever I have to do that task for. I remembered one fever dream where I had to swim across this ocean and I was really tired and fill a shampoo bottle, and then I would empty it, and I think I was expecting a genie to come out, but it said just liquid would come out, and it would say try again. And even though I was swimming, I felt very hot and uncomfortable, and this just went on forever. And you know, you don't want to just go through these monotonous motions having something happen. You want, as John Lennon says, you want some truth. So who's he experiencing in this fever dream? He's experiencing the short-sighted, narrow-minded hypocritics. You know, they don't give him any help. They just criticize him hypocritically. And he experiences Richard Nixon as this Mother Hubbard soft soaping him with just a pocket full of hope. You know, he wants to criticize Richard Nixon, but Richard Nixon's behavior doesn't make sense. It's described in this absurdist nursery rhyme language. How can you criticize politics when it exists in this absurdist way? So yes, Gimme Some Truth is a protest song about the futility of reaching real politicians like Tricky Dick Nixon, but it could just as much be a sort of literal description of a fever dream of experiencing this literally impossible world, just like the world of politics might be almost literally impossible and certainly figuratively impossible. The next track is called Oh My Love. It has more dream references in it. John sings, I feel dreams, everything is clear in my heart. So he wants the world from his lullaby, from Imagine. Yet every time he closes his eyes, he's back to the horrors of Jealous Guy and Give Me Some Truth. Musically, this one is interesting because the lyrics are happy and encouraging, yet the tune is mostly in a minor key. It's that moment in the dream where you think everything is going to be okay. You think you've woken up, but that nightmare is still creeping behind you. Then we get to How Do You Sleep? So for those who don't know this one, this is John's diss track to Paul McCartney. Paul McCartney had another song out around the same time called Too Many People, but I'm not exactly sure when exactly they would have listened to each, whether the songs were truly conceived independently or one was inspired by the other. It was a bit hard to tell looking at the dates. And so basically it's just John saying a bunch of disses to Paul and then saying, how do you sleep? All this really cool string sound plays in the background. And if we apply the death of the author theory to this one, that is to read meaning into it that John Lennon might not have literally intended when he wrote it, the function of this song on the album is to say, John Lennon really wants to kill the jealous guy, and he's making this album about wanting to kill the jealous guy. And yet he even includes on this album a song about being the jealous guy. John the hippie suddenly turns into mean, vindictive John again. And, you know, granted, Paul also made a diss track, but Paul's song mostly just passes for a happy little sing-song thing with little playful incense in there, where this one is barely a song. It's basically just John ripping at Paul and, you know, having fun to do it. It's fun in hindsight, but Paul really took it poorly. So how do you sleep, Paul McCartney? Well, this is followed, this song that starts with How, by another track that's just called How. And it's like John snapping back and going, oh no, I thought I was in control, but this jealous guy has permeated my body again. And God, I really can't function. I can't get this jealous guy out of me. It's an admission that despite what he said in the song, Oh My Love, John still hasn't woken up from the nightmare. He doesn't know what to do with parts of his being. He says, how can I have feeling when I don't know if it's a feeling? And he doesn't know if he can function in this world. You know, life can be long, you gotta be so strong. And the world, she is so tough. Sometimes I feel I've had enough. So at the brink of his nightmare, John is on the verge of suicide. But then we get to the happy concluding song, The Relief of Oh Yoko. So John sings, in the middle of the night, he calls Yoko's name. So he's in his nightmare, he's screaming, Yoko! And then he wakes up. He gradually gets up. He gets washed. He has a shave. The nightmares may come back. This album is not necessarily the end of John's struggles with internal self, but at least he offers this sort of happy ending that he always has Yoko to turn to, that this love is a certain thing. So if you even look at the iconic cover photo here, you see John Lennon's face in the clouds, yet when one thinks of being in the clouds, of imagining, one thinks of blissfulness, but John has this melancholy expression on his face. So even though it opens with the utopian communist lullaby of Imagine, the rest of this album is about a nightmare, and one just has to be grateful. It ends with the beautiful, catchy Oh Yoko, meaning that at least for a moment, John got to wake up from it. Hope you enjoyed that interpretation. Let me know what you think in the comments. Again, big reminder, I believe in death of the author. I don't want comments saying, John couldn't have literally planned all that out, because that's not what interpreting art's about. You're allowed to both look at the intentional and unintentional meaning of songs. But I'm looking forward to your theories about unintentional and intentional meaning in Imagine. It's a fun album to discuss. I'm Zach Morgenstern. This is Ludwig von B. See you next time.